Hello and welcome to the 18th episode of Season 3 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. This is the 82nd episode of the show and the 59th regular episode. Today, the one and only Kasey Bell of Shake Up Learning will be joining me to talk about dynamic and meaningful blended learning, her dynamic learning framework, choice boards, iced coffee, Netflix, margaritas, Minecraft, and more. Yeah, this is a fun one. Let's get to it.
I'm Jesse Lubinsky.
I'm Donnie Piercy.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Heil, hosts of the Partial Credit Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network.
Just like the show you're listening to now.
Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others.
Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Hello, welcome in. My name is Jake, and I'm here to talk to you about duct tape and educational technology and how the two fit together to form a goofy metaphor, but also an EdTech integration mindset that I believe can make the selection of tech tools for your learning environment a little bit less stressful. I'm also here to share with you a really insightful and really fun interview with one of my absolute favorite podcasters, authors, bloggers, and speakers, Kasey Bell. You probably know Kasey as the digital learning coach behind Shake Up Learning, or as an international speaker, or as the author of 3 amazing books, or as the host of the Shake Up Learning Show podcast, or as the co-host of the Google Teacher podcast, which rode off into the sunset a few months ago. But still, today, you're going to know her as one half of a really fun conversation that starts off on topics like iced coffee and Netflix and margaritas and Minecraft, but finds its way to some really powerful tips about dynamic blended learning. Before we get to that, though, here's a word from one of today's sponsors. Schools have been using the same Hall Pass system for the last 100 years. eHall Pass is an innovative, contactless, low-cost, and easily implemented digital tool that helps schools with security, oversight, and social distancing needs. eHall Pass can limit hall traffic building-wide, can restrict frequent flyers, you know that kid, prevent meetups, and can even prevent locations, like the bathroom, from overcrowding. Know who's in the hall at all times. Visit e-hallpass.com for more information and to learn about a free, no-commitment pilot. That's e-hallpass.com. Wow, I'm so surprised to be having a nice relaxing recording session here about 12 hours before this episode goes live. I was expecting to try to squeeze in about 20 minutes of recording now and then run off to my son's baseball game. And then when we got home from the baseball game, all bleary-eyed and tired before going to bed, record the rest of it and publish it just in time to get it to your earbuds. But I got a little surprise, and the baseball game is canceled, so I get to kind of sit back and I could just talk and take my time. How you guys doing today? I got to be honest, though, I was excited about the baseball game. I've been enjoying my son's games this year. I used to coach when he was a little bit younger, and then I was a scorekeeper for a while, and now I'm just a dad. I'm just a fan. So I just sit there watching closely, terrified that a foul ball is going to hit my mother or mother-in-law. Very relaxing stuff. So anyhow, tonight I don't have to do that because of the spring rain here in Ohio. So instead, I get to finish recording this podcast, which is good news because I am super excited to share with you my chat with Kasey Bell. This is part 2 of a chat with Kasey. As you may or may not know, I was on the Shake Up Learning show with her, which was such a huge honor because I'm a huge fan of Kasey's work and that show. That episode came out on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. And this episode here of Educational Duct Tape is coming out the following day, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo to those of you who celebrate. Anyhow, before we get to my chat with Kasey, I'd like to tell you about my upcoming season finale episode because we're getting close to that time. It's finally almost the end of the school year, and that means a little pause in the regular Educational Duct Tape episodes. Anyhow, when that season finale episode comes around, I would like to tell you how you can be a part of it because I want you, my friend, to share with the other duct tapers. And because I'm not above bribing, I'm going to send a free copy, a free signed copy of my book when it comes out. Is it coming out? I hope it's coming out. I don't know. I haven't gotten back the first edits yet. But when it comes out, I am going to send a free signed copy to one of the people that share something on that season finale episode. Do I have your attention? A free signed copy of a book? Are you listening? That's right. If you're one of the people that shares something that becomes part of the episode, you will have a chance at winning a free signed copy of my new book when it comes out this summer. I hope I'm not jinxing it by saying it's coming out this summer. First, let's talk about what you can share. So there's a couple of different options. Option A is sharing a favorite giggle moment or a funny memory from this season. It might come from today's conversation with Kasey. Trust me, there's plenty of opportunities. Or maybe it's from when Natasha and I talked about the TGIF TV shows and Not the Mama and Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Or when Eric Kurtz was on and I taught him how to say "blook it." Or maybe it's Joe Marquez talking about his appearance on Judge Judy, which nobody has found that episode yet, which is super disappointing. Or maybe it's Meredith Akers' fanny pack and her flatulence. She didn't really have any flatulence. If you've listened to the episode, you know what I'm talking about. Or Kasey Hall's police sirens. Or Robert Kaplinsky talking about Snoop Dogg, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. Or Tisha Poncio talking about the new kids on the block, or her new kids on the ed tech block. Anyhow, share about your favorite laugh from this season. We would love to hear about it. And if you do that, and I include it in the episode, that is one way that you could have a chance to win a free copy of my book, a free signed copy of my book. Option B is to share a favorite ed tech takeaway from this season. What was something that you learned and were super excited about? Desmos Activity Builder, Wakelet for digital portfolios, Edgy, whatever it was, we would like to hear about it. That's your second way you could potentially win a free signed copy of my book. Option C, my personal favorite, is a duct taper success story. What big success did you have this year? We would love to hear about something that you're super proud of, especially if it relates back to something that you learned on the show. So did you learn about Desmos Activity Builder from Robert Kaplinsky and then go use it and have a great time with it? Share about it. Did you go try out some of those digital citizenship and media literacy activities that Mike Abrams shared about when he was on the show? Tell us about it. Did you try having students have digital portfolios and Wakelet after hearing Tisha Poncio tell us about it? Tell us about it. You shoot to us about it, and then you're going to tell us about your experience. That's your success story, your duct taper success story. This is your chance to toot your own horn. And option D, the final option, did you have a favorite soapbox moment this year? If so, Soapy. Yep, that's you. And I would love to hear about that too. So share your own success story or your favorite giggle moment, EdTech takeaway, or soapbox moment on my SpeakPipe page. That's speakpipe.com/edu duct tape, or submit it on the show's Flipgrid. That's flipgrid.com/edu duct tape. Password edu duct tape, because you now have to have passwords on Flipgrids, which makes it a little bit confusing, but it's always edu duct tape, so you can figure it out. Again, SpeakPipe or Flipgrid. Links are in the show notes, and one person who gets included in the season finale episode will win a free signed copy of my book when it comes out. Get it to me by the end of May, get on the finale episode, and have a chance to win a free copy of my book when it comes out. Next up, it's calendar time. No, not like in first grade where you sing the Days of the Week song to the tune of the Addams Family theme. It's the time where I tell you what's coming up on my calendar. In June, I'll be kicking off the 10th and final cohort of my virtual course called Best Practices and Tools for Learning in All Settings. The 12.5 contact hour, 7-week asynchronous course will level you up on using Flipgrid, Screencastify or Loom, Edpuzzle, and Pear Deck or Nearpod in your classes. And by the way, it's in Google Classroom, so it'll probably also level you up on your ability to use Google Classroom, and it will help you in your classes, whether they're fully in person, remote, or concurrent. And by the way, hopefully they're fully in person. But anyhow, you can get details at jakemiller.net/KSU course 2020. Also in June, I'll be doing a keynote at the Summit at Murray State, as well as at WitCon, and in person, my first in-person conference at the Panhandle STEM Conference. That'll be my very first in-person speaking event since March 12th, 2020, which is crazy. I am psyched. In July, I'll be doing an educational duct tape workshop for Hardin schools in Kentucky, and in August, I'll be one of the virtual keynotes for the G-Tech Summit. I am super excited for all of these. And that's not all. There are a few other June and July events that are still in the works. Finally, if you've got an event coming up, I would love to be a part of it, whether it's on a stage or on a screen. My favorite thing to do is to speak to and work with educators. Really, I am not lying. So if you're planning an event, please head over to jakemiller.net/speaking to see some speaking videos and to send me a message. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. That's perfect. Climb up on there. I first met my friend Tim as I stepped onto the school bus the morning of the first day of 6th grade. I was so nervous. After I sat down, I fixed the roll at the bottom of my freshly pegged jeans just to make sure I was ready for the day. But the bully in the next seat over, we called him Python. He looked at me and he said, "You pegged them wrong." He looked at my pegged bugle boys and said, "Gag me with a spoon." Can you believe that? Well, I looked up with tears forming in my eyes, and before I could speak, from the seat behind me, my soon-to-be BFF Tim Toady was his name, said, "Listen, wastoid, there's more than one way to peg your jeans." I thought that was pretty bodacious. Don't you agree? Well, that story was all completely fabricated, so yeah, sorry about that. Pretty lame-o of me, right? I know. I did totally peg my jeans, though. That part was true. But I didn't know a bully named Python, or I didn't have a friend named Tim Toady. Nor did he ever teach me the tubular knowledge of there's more than one way to do it. Actually, Tim Toady is an acronym. TIMTOWTDI. TIMTOWTDI. Tim Toady. There is more than one way to do it. That's what it stands for. There is more than one way to do it. It came from early programmers working with a coding language known as Perl. That's P-E-R-L, which I had never heard of before researching Tim Toady. Anyhow, that language was intentionally designed so that there was more than one way, depending on the programmer's style, to reach the desired result. There is more than one way to do it. Ironically, there is disagreement over whether it's pronounced Tim Toady or Tim Toe Titty or Tim Tow Titty or Tim Toe Tootie, or who cares? There is more than one way to do it, right? Tim Toady. This has been my mantra. I didn't know the acronym, but otherwise, it's been my mantra in regards to educational technology for years. I just didn't know there was an acronym for it. You probably know that I share lots of ed tech tips on Twitter, many from me, many from others that I seek to amplify. But what you probably haven't realized is how often I get a "my way is better" response.
Why would you use Google Slides for that? This tool is so much better. Why would you use Flipgrid for that? I use this tool. When I do it, I use this keyboard shortcut.
Well, great. That's fantastic. I bet those things are better for you. I sound like I'm really hostile towards this person that gives me that response, and you guys are going to be scared to respond to me like that now. But seriously, there is more than one way to do it. I'm sure that person means well, but I think I'll just start responding with that acronym. Maybe I'll say, "I'm happy for you." Also, Tim Toady. I should say, every now and then there's a diamond in the rough, and their response teaches me a new and possibly even better strategy. And when they do, I listen, and I'm grateful, and I listen eagerly. But typically, they are providing a relatively equal alternative. It might be great for them, but it is relatively equal to the thing I originally shared. It's neither better nor worse. It's relatively equal. You know why? Because there is more than one way to do it. But this is also my mantra in regards to my recommendations on this show, right? Or in speaking events, or in my classroom. There is more than one way to do it. Pick the way that works best for you, your students, your classroom, your content, your style, and your technology. There is more than one way to do it. Speaking of more than one way, I'm releasing a new free resource, a PDF, an infographic that breaks down my top tools for a handful of goals that you might have. Want to make GIFs? Do you want to do some basic formative assessment and review? Maybe you need a formative assessment tool that provides deeper insights. Or maybe you need to do some formative assessment in videos. Or maybe formative assessments during direct instruction. Or note-taking in videos. And that's not all. Maybe you need student blogging or self-assessment or screencasting or video creation or audio recording or audio editing or animations. Speaking of editing, I said the word editing wrong there. Or animations or creating visuals or infographics or developing student-paced courses or tracking student progress. All of those items with roughly 5 tools for each, all in one document. To remind you that Tim Toady, there is more than one way to do it. So I'll share the top 5 or so that I believe in, but guess what? Tim Toe 5D, there's more than 5 ways to do it. But I'm going to share my top 5, and you might have others, and that's okay. But I think this list will be resourceful for you because it'll tell you where to look for the next steps there. You can't use them all, but if you have a list of what tools to consider, that's the first part, right, is knowing better. You have to know what tools are possible, and then you take the steps to do better. So if you want that resource, that document that asks those specific questions or has those specific goals and a list of about 5 tools that I recommend for each, head to jakemiller.net/the-tools to get your copy. That's jakemiller.net/the tools, TOOLS, to get your copy. You could access jakemiller.net/the-tools in Chrome, or in Firefox, or access jakemiller.net/the-tools in Safari, or on your iPhone, or access jakemiller.net/the-tools on an iPad. You know what? Tim Toady. There is more than one way to do it. I wonder how many people just turned it off while I did that. There's only one way, though, to move on from this soapbox moment, though, and that's by jumping into a really fun conversation with the great Kasey Bell. Here it comes. Oh, by the way, before we get to that, I know that Kasey is too modest to promote this herself, but she is currently offering a phenomenal free book study for her awesome book, Blended Learning with Google. You get to read a great book, learn some great stuff, discuss with some other awesome educators, and get 3 hours of credit, all for free. Free. You can learn more at blendedlearningwithgoogle.com/book study. blendedlearningwithgoogle.com/book study.
Today's guest.
All right, today's guest is Kasey Bell. Kasey is a former middle school teacher turned award-winning digital learning coach at Shake Up Learning. She is also an international speaker, author of Blended Learning with Google and Google A to Z and Shake Up Learning. She is the blogger at shakeuplearning.com and the host of the Shake Up Learning podcast. You can find all of her work at shakeuplearning.com and follow her at Shake Up Learning across all of the social medias, but not in social media, not in books, not on websites, but here in the podcast is Miss Kasey Bell. Welcome in, Kasey.
It's good to be here. By the way, I do answer to Shake as well.
Shake. First name Shake, last name Up Learning, or is Up your middle name?
I guess it's I don't know. I have been called Shake. I have actually had somebody yell out and they're like, "Oh my God, it's
Shake.
Shake."
Shake.
It's like, it's okay. I can, after being a teacher, you get used to answering to just about anything. Hey, you. Hey, miss.
Hey, mom.
Yeah, mom.
Grandpa. I get grandpa. Like, what? And you get like the other teachers, and then you have to say like, "That's okay. I take it as a compliment." When in reality, you mean like, "Don't do it again." Right?
No, I honestly, it's not a big deal, but even teachers do that too. They're like, hey, miss. That, I don't know. That was what my students would always do.
Miss. Yeah, but Shake, I don't get educational much. Hey, look, it's educational. Or hey, it's duct tape.
Duck. Hey, duck.
Duck. Hey, it's duck. There's duck over there. I'm like, make sure you pronounce the T. It's ducked with a T.
Ducked. I have to make myself do that.
Yes. You could tell already that this is interview or chat number 2 with Kasey and I, because we did an episode of the Shake Up Learning Show yesterday, which I am so psyched to be a part of, one of my own favorite podcasts. And so now we're already in mid-season form, giggling and goofing around here, because this is part 2, as they say in the Hot Shots movies, part 2.
Oh yeah, and that episode came out, like you said, yesterday. So we've got this little crossover thing going. Yeah. So you get the double dose of Jacob Learning.
Oh, she said it. I'm going to use that as a bumper in the rest of the season.
Oh, no.
Jacob Learning. You did it. It's in your own voice.
I did it. But it was totally you who came up with that. So
Yes. So you won. You got May 4th is the Shake Up Learning episode. So you have Star Wars Day, right? May the 4th be with you.
Yes.
And this episode, as long as I can keep my dot my I's quick enough and cross my T's quick enough, this is on May 5th. So I get Cinco de Mayo. So who has the better release date? Who has the better holiday?
Escape reality or escape reality?
Yeah, I think that's both true. What I would prefer is a Star Wars movie marathon with margaritas and tacos, and call it both, right?
Yeah.
And there's enough Star Wars movies to last you probably more than 24 hours. So you can just start on May 4th and go all the way through May 5th and cover them both.
You're giving somebody out there a really big idea.
I'm worried they're turning off the podcast to
Yeah.
go like blend up a margarita right now, though we've just lost all of our listeners.
That's okay. My Spanish name was Margarita, so I'm fully on board.
Your Spanish name was Margarita.
It was.
You were that kid in Spanish class that just wanted a funny name, huh?
Well, hey, I know what's good. Let's just say that, even from a young age.
Right. a young woman of fine taste, even in Spanish class.
It was
right?
on the list from the ones that we could choose, so I picked the thing I knew.
Yes, for sure. Then I was Jacobo, which is Jacob with an O on the end.
Oh my gosh.
It sounds pretty cool. I think that's an actual Spanish name, Jacobo, but you pronounce the J as an H.
I haven't heard that one.
And my teacher said it a little bit differently because I was always goofing off in class. People will be surprised to know that I was a very talkative student. And she would be like, Jacobo, and have to yell it at me like that. And that's how it sounds in my head. I still, if I'm out in public somewhere, if somebody were to yell that, which nobody ever yells Jacobo, I don't know. I'm not even sure if that's a real Spanish name. I would definitely turn and react to that, especially if they yell at that tone. Now that I think back on it, I wonder if I asked for my name to be Jacobo. And she said you would pronounce that Jacobo. And I was like, okay, that'll be the name then. That's what I went.
Probably, yeah.
So now we are Shake and Jacobo. Welcome to this episode of Shake and Jacobo, Talk Ed Tech.
Definitely sounds like a new language.
Right. We've created something of our own here. How are we already like 5 minutes and 40 seconds into this recording and we're still just goofing around about our names?
I don't know. It's probably just a product of overworked teachers.
Right. Overworked teachers and good coffee.
Yes. I have a feeling the energy level at the end of the episode is going to be different than the beginning because we're both downing the coffee.
Right. Thank you for talking long enough there for me to take a sip while you were talking.
Yeah.
That's what you always hope for in a good interview is that the other person talks long enough that you could take a sip while they're doing that.
Yeah, that's the sign of a good guest right there.
I don't even need video on for the cues of like the still drinking coffee. Like we just know. Give the person at least 15 seconds.
Yeah, there you go.
Except like that's like when you're riding in the car with somebody and they start driving too fast while you're taking a sip of your coffee and then you like spill it on your lip or something like that. The equivalent of that is when somebody asks you a question in a Zoom meeting while you're already talking.
Of course, I'm drinking iced coffee. Are you drinking iced?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Iced coffee like isn't even right to me.
Oh,
like,
I've got some
right.
cold brew over here, and yeah, during the day for some reason, like I like it.
I guess in Texas, I can understand that, right? You feel like,
we're down here sweating.
Yeah. And at the times I've been in Texas, like I just have to have a hot cup of coffee. Like you get that hot cup of coffee, and then you just like sweat while you drink it. But I'm dedicated to it. Like I don't give up on my coffee. That's what I have to do.
Well, I guess I'm a quitter then. So
when you're not a quitter, that's just
when it's like end of July in San Antonio, I'm like, no, I definitely need to go for the iced today. So
okay, I hear you. To each his own. To each his own cup of coffee. Well, even though, Kasey, we are goofing around and talking about coffee, I think we have to play a game right now. In my head, I was just thinking, we're having fun already. We've already recorded for a couple minutes. We're talking about coffee and things like that and our names and stuff and what our names were in Spanish class for some reason. We should just skip over the game because we're already having fun. But somebody would email me and be like, where was the game, Jake? There has to be games. I tune into Educational Duct Tape just for the games. I'm a little worried that if I ever do a survey of what they listen to the show for, that I'm going to find out that a lot of people turn the show off after the game is played. So
when you get into the learning, it just falls apart.
Right. That's the worst, Jake. The worst part of your show is the learning. The best part is the game. But we have to play a game for them anyhow. Let's go ahead and try it out.
Okay.
So we're going to play a game of which of the following is less torturous. I used to call this by a different, more common name, but I was told that it's copyrighted and I can't use it. So this is which of the following is less torturous. And today our question comes to us from my son, Beckett, my 7-year-old son, Beckett. Are you ready for it?
Yes. I was trying to take a drink.
That was not a long enough sentence on my part. And then I asked you a question. That's what you're not supposed to do. Don't finish with a question. Finish with a pause so that the person can finish their sip if needed. And I love that we heard the ice rattling there.
Yeah,
too.
I know. That was what I was saying is the bad thing about the recording is that I have the risk of ice noise. So
yeah, I have no ice noise. You might just hear me like blowing on my coffee.
I'll hear you like
a
slurping.
slurp. My wife would have to turn the podcast off. She hates that. She's like, why are you slurping it? I'm like, because it's 200 degrees. Well, then cool it down a little bit. Don't make it so hot.
Which of these things do you consider to be less torturous?
I know everybody knows this game, but I'm trying to give you time to take a sip of your iced coffee while I say this. So that's the rules of the game. Are you in?
Yes.
That was an intentional coffee.
I'm in.
Okay, here we go.
Which would be less torturous? Living in Minecraft or living in Netflix? If you lived in Netflix, you could jump into shows randomly. And if you lived in Minecraft, you'd randomly be able to teleport to the Ender Dragon and stuff. And fly around!
So I don't know if you can understand the question in his adorable 7-year-old voice, but he wants to know which of the following would be less torturous, living inside of Minecraft or living inside of Netflix. But he says if you live inside of Netflix, you could just go into the shows whenever you want to.
Well, I think my age is going to determine this answer. Minecraft would be cool. There were definitely some things that I would love to be able to do.
You could build whatever you want.
Could build, and what was it he was saying? I could fly.
You could fly around to an Ender Dragon. I don't even know what an Ender Dragon is,
either.
but he talks to me about this stuff, and I'm always like, "Ooh, cool."
Yeah,
I don't know. Dad, I built an Ender Dragon today, and I'm like, "Great." And he's like, "I also saw a Wither," and I'm like, "I don't know what that is." Wait, that's great, buddy. That's fantastic.
I think if I was a younger person, that would sound good. But hey, it's the end of the school year, and I'm definitely a fan of binge watching. So I think I could definitely say that Netflix would be less torturous for me.
Yeah, I think as much as I like to build stuff, I think I'm going there too. What are a couple?
Are
shows
margaritas included? I mean,
well, it depends on what show you go into
coffee.
in Netflix. Yeah, right. Well, so here's what I would do. I would live in Netflix land, and early in the morning, I would go into comedians in cars getting coffee, and Jerry and I would go get a cup of good coffee. And then when I got bored with that, I would go. I'm imagining this being like in Wreck-It Ralph, where they go into the area where they switch video games. So then I would go back to the main screen of Netflix, and then I would switch into, I don't know where I'd go next. But by the end of the night, I'd go to a show that has margaritas. I'm not sure what show that'd be.
Well, and you definitely would have more choice.
Right.
Netflix is like never ending, it seems. So, and hey, what about that show? What's it called? Nailed It?
Nailed It. You're going to visit Nailed It?
Isn't that the one where they try to bake all the stuff? Yeah, I want to go test out all the food.
Oh, you're just going to be the food tester.
Yeah.
You're not going to go, like Gordon Ramsay maybe has a show on Netflix. You're not going to
no,
go
I can't
there.
stand him.
Okay, you're going to the one where they mess up the cooking.
No, but I'm going to eat like the real one, like the demo.
Yeah. You'll be like, that one, you did an okay job, but I'm going to now eat the correct one.
But this is the pretty cupcake that I want to eat. Or visit one of the documentaries did you ever see, what's it called? Oh, I forgot. It's something with the word An Idiot Abroad.
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh, you got to watch it. So, you know who Ricky Gervais is, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
okay, so this is one of his friends that he sends on a trip to places that he knows he'll hate. And most people wouldn't, but it's just the personality of this guy, and it's so hilarious. I would love to see that, like it in real life, IRL.
So you're going to the places?
Yeah, no, if I'm in Netflix, then I'm like with him, I imagine. Or it feels, I don't know. I can't quite understand if this question means I'm in virtual reality.
I don't know.
Am I like inside the game? Am I, we're going to have to get more details from Beckett.
I will have him record an addendum to tell us all this stuff. It will get very weird, and it will end with him giggling and dancing around the room. And I'm not sure why he's even dancing. It always deteriorates down to that. I don't know. Or maybe not deteriorates. It always upgrades up to that. You never know. His original question was going to be who you'd rather battle in Netflix, or not in Netflix, in Minecraft. And I was like, no, you can't ask an adult who they'd rather battle in Minecraft. They would not know. And then his second option was, would you rather eat eggs or bacon? And I was like, well, that's a fine question, but that's a boring one to talk about. People would just answer, and then
It's
we'd be like,
always
okay,
bacon, y'all.
it's always right. That's what I said. I was like, the person would say bacon, and then we would just move on. And then I was like, we need something different. And then this was his new one, and I was like, all right, we'll take it.
Yeah. Well, it was very creative. I'm already like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've watched so much on Netflix. I can't believe my mind is like blank right now. I need more coffee.
You need more coffee. Come with me to Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Do you watch that show, by the way?
I have. I haven't watched all of them, but yeah, sorry. I haven't watched them all, but I have definitely seen them.
Yeah, I enjoy that show. I hope you'd pick a cool car for me, and then we go get some coffee. Okay, let's moving on from Comedians in Cars and Netflix and Minecraft and coffee and all this weird stuff. We are going to do learning, and now 8 people have just turned the podcast off. Hopefully we don't lose too many other people. So I have an educational duct tape question for you, Kasey. And for those people listening who might not be familiar with educational duct tape, it is the idea, it's my goofy metaphor, that educational technology is at its best when it's not the goal of a lesson, but it's a tool that we're using to solve a problem, meet a need, address a learning standard. But we're thinking about things from the teacher perspective first, the pedagogy they're trying to teach, or the learning goals they're trying to teach, or whatever they're trying to achieve in their classroom. And then we think technology second as the tool. So my question for you, based off of some of the awesome work that you've done over the years, is how can I make blended learning dynamic and meaningful?
Well, that's my favorite question. It's as if I had input into this question.
It seems it's a little bit suspicious, isn't it?
It's framed exactly as I would have asked the question. No, I am a firm believer of keeping things practical. I think you are too. That is my goal. I want the things that we do in the classroom, including, using technology or whatever tools that we have at our disposal, whatever our duct tape is, Mr. Duck, is to make sure that our bottom line is always learning and helping our teachers learn how to see that. And so when I was writing my first book, Shake Up Learning, I was trying to find a way to bring all these things together. All the things that I talk about and share, and the things that I've seen in the classroom that are so amazing. And really what it came down to was pushing boundaries. We have so many unspoken boundaries, it feels like, in education, things that we are just used to, the tradition of the educational system, the traditional classroom, the desks and rows, and every student doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. And the way that I know I was taught, probably the way you were taught. Yeah. And we have so many other ways that we can increase engagement and learning with our students. And for me, it became a natural fit to start using that word dynamic. And I think it may stem from teaching static and dynamic characters. That's a common way to compare and contrast things. And for me, static describes that old school way of teaching and learning, that the way that I taught actually my first few years of teaching, because I didn't know any better. And as I began to learn and develop this framework, it really became about going beyond that, pushing that boundary beyond the things that we thought were possible on paper. It's moving beyond substitution, but it's more than that. It's about creating these dynamic learning experiences for students. And I put together the dynamic learning framework where it has 5, what I call 5 Bs or 5 beyonds. These are the dynamic learning characteristics, going beyond the bell, beyond the grade level and subject area, beyond the walls, beyond the tools, and beyond the due date. And these are just ways to describe some of the ways that teachers can create and learning experience for students that is more dynamic, that does do things that we couldn't previously do.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the reference to the static characters and dynamic characters. So even though I was not language arts or am not language arts, I know enough to understand that a static character is one that doesn't grow, doesn't change, stays the same from the time you open the book at the beginning to the time you close the book on the last page. And so what you're saying is, let's make our learning a system where it's the opposite of that, where there's growth, where there's change from beginning to end, where we're reflecting and assessing what we're doing and changing things up as we go, but also where we're going beyond beyond the idea of these static things, of these never changing things, and developing things with that word beyond. I love the use of the word beyond in there.
Exactly. And that's really what I see kind of as a barrier for a lot of teachers. It's not that they don't want to do things differently. It's really the exposure and the ways to do things differently. You know, we feel like we're confined by the walls of the school. Well, guess what? This past year just redefined that. So going beyond the walls took on a whole new meaning during the pandemic. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to build, you know, this future citizen that can contribute meaningfully to the world and to do all the things that you and I talk about all the time, you know, the 4 C's, and making sure that students are spending time creating and not just consuming the content that we have, and actually exposing them to new ideas and interests and help them find their own passions. Because to me, that is such a sad thing to see a senior graduate from high school who has no idea what they're truly interested in.
Yeah. I think that's one of our jobs in school, is to help them identify what paths they might not want to go down and what paths they might want to go down. It's okay at 17 or 18 years old to not know what their next step is, but they should have some exposure and some experiences that help them make those decisions, right?
Yes, they definitely need to do that. And one of my favorite ways to find that wiggle room, you know, teachers feel like there's no wiggle room. We have this prescribed curriculum that we have to follow every single day, but just building in voice and choice opens up so many doors for students.
Yeah, I like that. I like that point there. I was going to say my next question was going to be, it's my first time teaching science in, I think, 10 years, 9 years, something like that. I've taught math, I've taught STEM, I've tech coached, but this year I'm teaching science. And I feel like a first year teacher, and it's taking me so much time just to get the curriculum stuff and get my activities ready and things like that. And I feel like I'm not always teaching beyond anything, right? Because I'm just trying to get the basics into my delivery and my pedagogy and everything. So what are some steps that I could take in my situation to make my classroom more dynamic? I think the first answer is voice and choice, right? What are some favorite ways to bring voice and choice in?
Well, and voice and choice ties back to that beyond the grade level and subject area characteristic that we were talking about before, because, you know, we've probably all seen, and if not, you need to see the Ken Robinson TED Talk, Do Schools Kill Creativity? And the RSA Animate that goes with that, where it shows students on this conveyor belt. And when you really picture this true factory model of education, we as teachers know this doesn't work. We know that students are individuals, that personalized learning is going to help them and mold them into the students that we want them to be, and hopefully into the adults that we want them to be. And when we talk about pushing those boundaries, again, okay, we've got this. Where is that wiggle room in your curriculum to offer some voice and choice? And my favorite way to give choice is choice boards. I talk about choice boards like nonstop, but for me, it opened so many doors in my own classroom. It was kind of an aha moment when I was struggling to figure out how to do small group instruction with my students, because I was a baby teacher and I didn't know what the other kids were going to do. Right. And that was like my big fear. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to go crazy. Please, somebody tell me how this works, because if I'm pulling a small group, what are these other kids going to do? And somebody introduced me to choice boards. I was like, oh, okay. So we can have some self-directed learning. We can have some autonomy. We can give students some ownership as they're working through some things. And of course, I learned a lot of hard lessons about what to do and what not to do with choice boards, but we eventually got it figured out, and the kids loved it. They thought, what? We get to pick? Like, this was a brand new concept. And a lot of students will have paralysis over that. In fact, the teacher pleasers are the ones that have the hardest time. The kids who typically are probably your straight A students, the pre-AP kids, those were the ones who were like, but Miss Bell, can you just tell me which one to choose? Because they still feel like there's one correct answer. Right. There's one correct way to do something. Well, guess what? Real world problems don't have one correct answer. Yeah. And if we're still enforcing this, this antiquated idea of there being one correct answer and it's on the bubble sheet and you got to get it on the test. And of course, as another thing that Sir Ken has said, I say that like I know him, I was hanging out with Sir Ken, but it's the correct answer is in the back of the book. And if you look, that's cheating. But we don't have that world anymore. That's not the world that we live in. We live in a world where we can summon answers from any device. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I just believe that using these to open up these doors, and of course the choice can happen in so many different ways, whether that's content, product, process. There are lots of easy ways to jump into choice that it doesn't have to seem overwhelming.
Yeah, I like that point of content, process, product, or whatever it might be in your choice board, because I think a lot of educators assume that it's always a project that the kids are making. So that would be product. So they're choosing what their way they're representing the material is going to be, which is a great option, but it doesn't have to be just that. And I think that going back to kind of where you started that with when you were a baby teacher, as you called it, which I love that term, trying to find a way to do small group instruction or to do kind of stations. If we do that using kind of busy work, like you guys are going to work on this worksheet while I work with this group of students, there's a chance, especially you and I as middle school teachers, there's a chance that those other kids that aren't in the small group, they're going to be goofing off, and you're going to have to take your attention away from the small group to handle them, because what kid wants to do a worksheet for all that time, right? So by building in that choice board, we know from learning science that giving students that choice, even if it's not the choices they want, like they want to go watch Netflix or play Minecraft, right? If they want to do those things, still giving them a little bit of academic choice still does give them that kind of hit of motivation that makes them want to continue working on that,
Definitely. And the earlier they get this exposure, the better, because, like I said, my experience in middle school, and I've seen this happen in the upper grades, because these kids haven't been exposed to choice most of their educational career, they've been told, okay, there's one way to do it, like I said. So building that in and making sure that we do some other things, like at the center of the dynamic learning model are those 4 C's that we were talking about earlier. And that's a perfect place to wiggle in the 4 C's into those choice boards.
Hey listeners, this episode is sponsored by Spaces Digital Portfolios. Spaces makes student growth in your classroom visual with their free visual portfolio tool. Teachers can create spaces for their entire classroom, student groups, or for individual students, all online and all completely free. Celebrate student learning with a digital portfolio platform backed by 15 years of teacher feedback. Try Spaces at www.spacesedu.com today. So what are some of your favorite tools to stick into a choice board?
I don't like to use the tool. I like to get the student to choose the tool.
Ooh, okay. So you wouldn't even say, so if you're developing a choice board, you're not even going to say, develop something in Screencastify or Scratch or Flipgrid. You're going to say what? What would your prompt be?
Well, first, it's going to depend on the learning goal, but second, it would be something you have to work up to. So if you've never done choice boards before, don't give them unlimited choice. That's too many choices and they'll be overwhelmed. So I usually say stick to 2 to 3 choices at most the first time you ever give choice. And when you do that, whether that's, choice of tool, maybe like you said, let's Screencastify, maybe you're giving them some video tools. Those should be tools they've been exposed to before. You need to build that digital toolbox so they're not spending all of their time trying to, 1, decide which tool they want to use, and then 2, trying to learn how to use the tool. And then we completely lose focus on the learning goal and we're just using technology for technology's sake.
Yeah. Yeah. So then if you're in that situation and you're going to do that, like I said with my example of where I said Screencastify or Flipgrid or Scratch, you would have done something with Screencastify and something with Flipgrid and something with Scratch before you get to that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I would not build in the choice until we've done something, at least whole group or small group, as a class where you kind of know what they've been exposed to.
Yeah.
And then you sprinkle in the new stuff. There are definitely opportunities to do that, but I always want to stick with those tried and true tools first. And even like we mentioned before, it's not just the tool that can be the choice. I might be using Screencastify for everyone to do a reflection. And one of my favorite strategies that I share actually in both Shake Up Learning and Blended Learning with Google is in the tic-tac-toe choice board, which is my absolute fave because it's so flexible.
Yeah, and yours is one of my favorite ones to share. And when I share choice boards, the one of yours that I share gets the oohs and ahs because the way that you've designed it, I think you've got the blue and the white and the yellow and the stars, and you've made it 4 things that kind of match and 4 things that kind of match, and then the one must do in the middle. I think the design of it's really good. Sorry to interrupt you, but that
no,
one,
no,
I have to applaud that board for sure.
Thank you. It's not pretty or fancy. If you want that, that's not what you come to me for. So, if you want the ombre background, go get it yourself. But I'm just, I'm like I said, just practical. Ain't nobody got time for that. Y'all make it pretty if you want to, but it's just simple and clean. And this was the lesson that I learned in my classroom, though, with the tic-tac-toe choice board. Was the first time I did it. Lo and behold, my 8th graders, guess what's the first thing they start doing when they look at their choices?
Are they thinking like tic-tac-toe? I think they're thinking the line they'll have to make, or what are they doing?
They are looking for the easiest ones. Yeah. Which one is going to require the least amount of effort? Yeah. And it's not every kid, but let's be honest. You know what I'm talking about, especially in those grade levels. And they're automatically thinking, how quickly can I finish this and play my game or read my book or whatever they think they get to do, but they didn't have that option.
Well, you think about all your different kinds of kids, right? If you've got your kids who aren't super motivated to do the work, they want the easiest option. And you've got your kids who are really focused on their grades. So they want the easiest option to ensure they're going to get the grade, right? And so almost everybody is going to lean towards that option unless you build in a reason to not work towards that option.
Right. And so once I figured that out, I was like, okay, because when they start making the tic-tac-toe, like all the way across the top or on the sides, that's when things started to get like really hard to balance that workload and reaching the learning goal. And so once I kind of decided, what if everybody has to do that middle square? Yeah. That controls how they make the tic-tac-toe. And then that also gives me some lesson design control, like you said, with the one set of blue and the one set of yellow. So they've got to choose the middle and one blue and one yellow. Then the blue can align with one learning goal. The yellow can align with another. Or it could be the blue is formative and the yellow is summative. I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's like I said, it's so flexible. Plus, even with 3 choices can be a lot for kids, even high school kids who've not been given those opportunities. So they're really only making 2 choices. And that eliminated a lot of issues. And there's usually one thing you want every kid to do. Like everybody's got to read this, or everybody's got to write a summary, or whatever it is. Make that the non-negotiable, put it in the middle, and you're golden. Yeah.
So let's say you're crafting a choice board for class. How many of your beyonds do you feel like you're often hitting on there?
I don't like to think of them as something you have to hit in every single lesson, because that would mean that there's some kind of perfect lesson plan out there, and there's just not.
Right.
There are very few lessons or projects that would hit on all 5 at once. Some of those would be like Genius Hour and things like that are just not something that's practical for every classroom. Right. So for me, it's about finding the ways to connect it back to your curriculum, what works, and what works with those learning goals. So Beyond the Tool is actually the easiest of all of them. I didn't necessarily realize that when I first created this, but that's the one that everybody clung to. So whenever I do a workshop and everybody's designing a lesson, they're all going beyond the tool, which, that's using new old tools to do new things. and choice of tool and building that in is a little bit easier than doing some of the other things. Like Beyond the Bell is working on mindset. So you're not going to work on mindset in every single lesson either. And you're not going to have choice or, go beyond what your grade level and subject area curriculum tells you to in every lesson either. So I think it's about finding that balance like it is with everything else. We don't teach the 4 C's, or really we don't teach the 4 C's, we embed the 4 C's, but most lessons don't have all 4, know. And a lot of subject areas lend themselves to different things more easily. As a language arts teacher, well, communication is pretty natural for a language arts teacher. In science, you might have more of the critical thinking, but we all have ways to hit all 4, maybe not as often.
Right. At some point in the school year, at some point in the class, you're hitting on them all.
I think building that awareness as a teacher of what you're actually doing, I didn't realize that I'm really not getting my kids to collaborate enough, or we're really not being very creative, because guess what? Creativity is not tested. And so I don't feel like the pressure that I do to do some of the other things.
Right. Yeah, and I like the way when you look at your dynamic learning kind of like infographic, which I'll put a link to in the show notes. You've got the 5 beyonds kind of on the outside edges. I'm acting this out with my hands. You can't see it. The audience can't see it, but yet I'm acting out myself, making a circle with why am I doing this? You've got the 5 beyonds, and then it works its way inwards with dynamic learning at the center. But one notch out from there are those 4 C's. So you kind of build up. By doing these 5 things, you're working your way into those 4 C's, which is building up to dynamic learning, right?
Yes, learning being at the center of everything. That's our target. That's what we're trying to align everything to.
Yeah, I love that. And then so then we've got in the purple on this graphic, purposeful planning, focused on learning outcomes, fearless implementation. These ones are upside down, so they're harder for me to read. Facilitated with finesse. I love that one. Honest reflection and share with the world. But those kind of relate back to each of these, each of the 5 beyonds. The honest reflection and the share with the world obviously goes back to beyond the school, beyond the walls, and things like that.
Yes,
and truly makes what's dynamic, right?
Right. And that purple ring that you were just reading, that outer ring, is just the entire lesson planning cycle for the teacher. And actually, one of my, I guess my biggest faults in lesson planning as a teacher was not remembering to take time to reflect and to make notes after a lesson. And so that's kind of what that honest reflection piece is critical, because I don't know about you, Jake, but many times I would deliver a lesson, have a problem, and forget, and the next year do it again the same way and have the same problem.
Yeah, and you're like, this happened last year.
Why did I forget about this? This took an extra 30 minutes because I forgot to change this. And what you and I have learned so much from sharing with the world, whether we're sharing our failures or our successes, putting that out there. And I have a database of dynamic learning experiences that have been created by teachers that are out there for free. And so that is me also encouraging teachers to contribute to that and not just take from that. But we're all out there searching for lesson ideas and, sharing with the world. And just because you think, oh, mine's not good enough, it's not true. That everyone has something unique to share and something that's uniquely you and a new perspective. As teachers, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And so I just want to encourage teachers to do that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. We talk a lot about on the show about the idea of adjacent possible. And adjacent possible is that what's possible for any one of us is expanded by what we expose ourselves to. And so when I look at one person's lesson, that expands what's possible for me. But then if I share my reflection on that or my changes that I'd make, then that makes changes to the other person, right? Because we come at things from different angles and different directions. And just like even like a choice board, like if I make a choice board the way I think it should be, and then I look at the one that you're talking about, then I go like, oh yeah, what if I did this, right? And so by sharing things, we upgrade our experience and the quality of our work, but we also upgrade for the people around us too by that adjacent possible. So our possibilities are expanded by those things that are next to us that we expose ourselves to.
And everything you just described was a teacher hitting on the 4 C's just on their own too.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. They're collaborating, they're communicating, there's critical thinking happening. Yep. And there's other C's in there too, like coffee.
Yes.
Iced or hot, either
The
way.
number one C.
Why don't we change it to the 5 C's and add coffee in it? Well, speaking of which, Kasey, I am at the bottom of my cup of coffee now, and I feel like I need to go refill, and maybe the listeners do too. And I'm going to let you get your break to go get your iced coffee. Are you good with wrapping up to go fill up your coffee? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm good.
Well, I am so glad that you came on to talk about this stuff. There is just so much. I like how when we think about this format that you have here, both with dynamic learning and with the Beyonds and with just the idea of bringing that into blended learning, that it is a kind of limitless idea, right? Where we could apply that to any grade level, any content standard, any tech tool, any tech goal, any verb, any noun, whatever we're trying to do, it can kind of pivot and cover all those bases for us.
Yes, absolutely. And, I always strive to create things that are not intimidating for teachers. Again, keeping things on that practical level.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many frameworks out there that are brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not negating that. I just feel like teachers are often intimidated,
Right.
and things get watered down for some reason.
Yeah.
Some higher up goes to some training, and then by the time it trickles down to the classroom teacher, whatever they get is like, what? Like, I don't know about you, but I've walked into presentations before on SAMR and some other things. I'm like,
Right.
where did you get this information? This is not right. I just feel like, okay, let's get to the heart of the matter, and, dynamic learning, student learning right at the center of it all.
Right. I love that. Well, thank you for being on today to talk about it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Jake.
Thank you. Jake Up Learning. How awesome was that interview? Kasey is a rock star. Let's review some of the stuff that we discussed. Kasey reminded us to keep things practical and keep learning as the priority. She shared about the dynamic learning framework and its 5 Bs, going beyond the bell, beyond the grade level and subject, beyond the tools, beyond the due date, and beyond the walls of your classroom. She also gave us some great steps that we could take to make our class more dynamic, including offering voice and choice, using choice boards, tapping into self-directed learning, giving students autonomy over the content they learn, the process they follow, and the product they create. She gave us, along with that, some choice board essentials, like starting with the learning goal, starting with 2 or 3 choices at first, and then ramping that up later. And if we're giving choice and tool, she gave us the tip of starting with something that's already familiar. Build up that toolbox as you go before you give them as choices. Finally, if you want to learn more about this dynamic learning stuff that Kasey's talking about, check out her book, Shake Up Learning. It goes into in detail. The subtitle is actually Practical Ideas to Move Learning from Static to Dynamic. And finally, check out her new book and that book study that we talked about earlier, Blended Learning with Google, Your Guide to Dynamic Teaching and Learning. That's the book. And then there's also the free book study. A link to that is in the show notes. Wow, so much good stuff coming from Kasey today. All right, and now time for my favorite part of the show, which is the celebration of the adjacent possible. Adjacent possible is the idea that whatever you do, whatever you try, whoever you talk to, whoever you listen to, wherever you go, opens you up to new adjacent possibilities and opens them up to new adjacent possibilities. And the connections and discussions between me and you and you and you and you and your colleagues, between duct tapers, between educators, those open up our adjacent possibilities. So today, I've got a little bit of adjacent possibility from the duct tapers to share with you. And first up, I've got a message from Judy Dawson. Judy called into the show's SpeakPipe page, speakpipe.com/edu duct tape. I absolutely love this message from Judy for multiple reasons. You're going to know why as soon as you hear it. It's an absolute blast. But Judy, I got to tell you, I tried to email you after you left this SpeakPipe to make arrangements to send you some swag, and the email bounced back at the email that you listed. So, Judy, reach out to me because I owe you some stickers and keychains and whatever other kind of stuff I have, and maybe a roll of duct tape. Not really a roll of duct tape, but maybe I should have branded duct tape that I could send to Judy. If I ever get it, I will be sending it to Judy. Anyhow, here's Judy.
Hi, Jake. My son once made a hat out of duct tape, and my cooker is fixed with duct tape. And probably you should always fly with a roll of duct tape in your bag in case you get stranded on a desert island. Your podcast this year has really, really helped me. It has been so great to learn all the things that I can do online, and I sincerely hope that I'll take it with me when we go back to live face-to-face teaching. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I got someone called Steve to listen to your podcast. Thank you for everything you do, and keep doing it. Thanks ever so much. Bye.
Oh, Judy, thank you so much for that. First of all, Judy's accent, amazing. I feel like I need Judy to voice over all of the transitions and intros to my show now instead of my wife. Sorry, honey, you're kicked off. Judy sounds awesome. Judy, you cracked me up with the Steve part at the end, and your son's use of duct tape and you taking duct tapes on planes. I don't know if that would make it through TSA or not here, but maybe I should try that out. But Judy, thank you so much for that message. Please do send me a DM or an email or something. Judy, let me know your address so I can send you some swag. For the rest of you that want to hear your voice on the show, the best thing you could do is what we talked about earlier on the show, which is to become a part of the season finale episode, which is coming up in early June. So sometime by the end of May, send me a message either on SpeakPipe or on the show's Flipgrid grid, which are both in the show notes. Links to them are, at least. And you can do one of four things. First up is telling us about one of your favorite soapbox moments from this season. Second is sharing with us a duct taper success story you've had this year. What is something that you use in your classroom with success thanks to something you learned on the show? Third is what is a favorite tech tool that you learned about? So that's kind of related. Maybe it just doesn't have the success story piece tied to it. And fourth is a favorite giggle from the season, something that made you laugh. Maybe it was today. There was plenty of opportunities for that. So that's going to do it for our Jason Possible for today. I can't top the message from Judy. Actually, honestly, I have some questions to answer at some point in time from some people. That's another thing you could send to the show. But all of the questions in my list right now that I need to follow up on at some point in time take a little bit more research for me than I have time for tonight. So they're going to have to hold off. Yes, the baseball game was canceled, but I still have other things going on in my life. So I can't answer those questions yet, but I'm going to answer them soon. If you could send me some easier questions, maybe people, they would get on the show a little bit faster. But I do have some other questions that I do intend to follow up on at some point in the future. But that does it for today's episode. Oh, wait, I've got to give you your homework for today. Last week, I think it was Steve. That was a couple weeks ago before Judy called in. No, last week it was something else. I don't remember what it was last week. But your homework for today is to find an educator who likes margaritas as much as Kasey apparently likes margaritas, and tell them about the show. Say, hey, listen to this episode. They talk about margaritas and educational technology, and I bet you'll have fun while you're listening. And it's up to them whether they want to listen or drink a margarita while they listen or not, but find that educator who likes margaritas, tell them about the show, because I would love to have them for a duct taper. Okay, that does it for today's episode. Check the show notes for details about signing up for my newsletter, joining the Duct Tapers Facebook group, inquiring about having me speak at an upcoming event, getting some podcast stickers, and more. And don't forget, head to jakemiller.net/thetools if you want that free resource that includes my top 5 or so tools for a whole bunch of different things you could be trying to do in your classroom. And don't forget to do your homework. As always, as a parent, I'm grateful for the work you do. And as an educator, I'm proud of your dedication to lifelong learning.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please consider rating and reviewing the show on your favorite podcast app. #EduDuctTape.
All right, today's guest is Kasey Bell. Kasey is a former middle school science teacher. I threw science in. That's me. That's a middle school science teacher. That is
it's not
you.
Science. It's language arts.